welcome to Wine and Crime. It's a place where we sit down on our lazy asses, drink some wine, and talk about some crime. For this case, let me take you back to October 2015 with Kyle Farashian. It's gonna be a bit weird because at the end you're gonna be a bit confused, but not in the sense that it's unsolved. It's a completely solved case, but just the fact that someone like this exists out there is a bit confusing. Like, you just don't understand. Like, imagine committing a crime because a current situation took place, or whatever you perceive to be a current situation. So, Kyle was a young boy, he was 18 years old, and he lived in Florida. Everyone described him as an outgoing, just a positive person overall. He was someone that people considered to be comforting. So, if you were worried about something, you were nervous about something, he was really good at just being like, everything's gonna be okay, don't even worry about it. He was obsessed with bike rides, he loved video games, he just, was into normal 18-year-old boy stuff. During the weekdays, he would stay with his mom and his sister in his mom's house. And then every single weekend, he would go 50 miles to his dad's house and stay with him for the weekend. So, obviously, the parents were divorced. He was a little bit shy around strangers, which kind of becomes important later on. One day in 2015, he called his mom's house and he was like, "Hey mom, I'm at my dad's house and guess what? You know how you were telling me that I should get a part-time job and I was hired. I'm so excited." And she was like, "Oh, why did you get hired?" And he said, "Well, I'm gonna be a clerk at 7-Eleven, but guess what, Mom, guess what? They said that I can work the night shift, which means that I don't have to talk to a lot of customers, which is awesome, and, I get shy around people, and it's perfect, it's gonna be so much fun. I think I'm gonna love my coworkers." And so his mom was so excited. Literally everybody around him was just so happy for him. He started working at this job and all his coworkers liked him. But then October 31st, 2015 came around and obviously nobody wanted to work the night shift on Halloween night. You just have crazy people coming in, they're usually drunk, fumbling around, just, wearing their costumes. But Kyle said that he will work the night shift. It's no big deal. So he worked the night shift pretty much alone until his co-worker showed up because she was the next cashier who took his place around 3 in the morning. And then all of a sudden, the local dispatch for 911 gets a phone call from a woman saying, "Help, help! I'm at 7-Eleven, there's a fire inside and I think someone is lit on fire. Please hurry up." The dispatcher immediately sends so many corresponding officers to the crime scene. First, they sent the fire department because, in this case, when you know that there's a fire, who else would you send? Right? And police officers were not even alerted until the fire department showed up. The firefighters said that inside of the 7-Eleven, it was pretty dim. It was dimly lit. It seemed like all the lights had gone out. There was a lot of dark smoke inside the building. But in terms of structuralness, the building itself wasn't crumbling. It wasn't lit in flames. So most of the fire had been put out. Now it was just smoke. It was a bit confusing because the way they described the scene is that there was a lot of smoke damage, but there wasn't any structural damage, meaning that the fire didn't bring down walls. It's almost like if you walked in there and you had no idea what smoke damage was. You could just be like, "Oh yeah, something happened here, but it's not that serious." So the fire department put out the itty bitty fire that was on the counter, where you check out at 7-Eleven. There was someone who was just laying there, covered in serious burns. They had blood on the floor, all around them and on top of them, and they were now deceased. So the fire department was like, oh shit, we don't fuck with this shit. So they called the homicide department. This part of Florida wasn't like Florida that you see on TV, like Florida Man, you know. This part was a pretty chill town, like a retirement town. Nobody was, fighting alligators. Weird example. I don't know why that came into my mind, but also, it's a real thing. And to be frank, it's probably a competition. Point being, police showed up. It looked like some kind of a violent crime happened. So they started investigating, and the very first question that the police had was that, what prevented this person from running out? Because it doesn't make sense. Usually when you're on fire, you go frantic. You usually run around and run out of the door. But it looked like this person made no attempt to leave, because most of the fire was concentrated at the counter of this 7-Eleven. The next thing that they realized is that this person must be a 7-Eleven employee because he was wearing the uniform, and the way that he was placed around the counter, it seemed like he was probably an employee. So they brought in the body for autopsy, and they got the reason why this person did not leave. There was actually 2 gunshot wounds to the head. This drove the investigators crazy because they realized, they found out that it was an 18-year-old boy named Kyle Frisian. Like, what? It makes no sense. First thing in people's mind was that it must be a robbery. So they checked the safes, checked the cash register, checked the aisles, but not a single thing, not a penny, was stolen. So they started investigating, and one of the first things that you want to do is investigate people who are close to Kyle. Nobody had any reason to hurt Kyle. Everybody loved him. They were all devastated too. So they asked if Kyle had any enemies. And I don't know if you can hear, but somebody's having a party and the music is pretty loud. It's gypsy music. So entertaining. So back to the story. The answer was no. So the police needed to see if they could find any other evidence. So they went back to the 7-Eleven and they found out that there were CCTV cameras everywhere. But remember, there was smoke damage, so the hard drive was pretty damaged, which then would corrupt the files, so you can't really look at them. So they started freaking out. They sent it to their people, and they were able to find the footage of that night. They were a bit blurry, but they were able to find the footage in which everything was sane. It was just so strange. Kyle was in the back of the store, so he couldn't see any of the customers. The reason why Kyle was in the back is because there was a bell on the door. So every time someone came in, the bell rang so he could hear and know when someone came in and there was a customer. But it hasn't rang, so nobody else was in there. So he was in the back, but now he heard the bell ring, so he came out to the front, but he didn't see any customer. What he didn't see was that someone in a mask and in a hoodie and gloves had walked through the aisles to a different section of the store. He just looked at the door, didn't see anyone, and he came across the counter and he started looking aisle by aisle. And by the time he got to the 3rd aisle, a masked person jumped out and shot Kyle at the spot. Kyle fell to the ground, and this person stood over Kyle's body and shot him one more time. And then he grabbed his gas can and started pouring gasoline all over the counter of the 7-Eleven. He grabbed a lighter from the counter to try to set some fire, but it was unsuccessful, so he grabbed another lighter and tried to do it again. And this time he got a little flame over Kyle's body. And then the person just ran out of there. But there were a couple clues left behind after all this. One of which was that each time the killer put the gun on the ground, he put the gasoline down with it, and they were able to measure out the type of gun it was. It was a long barrel revolver. And the next thing was that they had taken off their gloves at one point, and they could see that it was a white person. They didn't know if he was necessarily Caucasian, but he had a light skin tone. They were also really skinny. They were wearing baggy clothes, but still you could see that they were really thin. So the police were like, okay, let's just take all of this information and see what we can do. So the first thing that they wanted to do is to find out that if, there were any witnesses. So the first person they interviewed was the next cashier who was going to be on the next shift. Because at the time this whole thing went down, Kyle was just about to finish his shift. So he was literally about to change shifts. She said that she arrived at 7-Eleven. She saw that the lights were off and there was a fire burning. So she called Kyle, wondering if anything had happened. But he didn't pick up. But then she heard sirens, and it was 911, so she wasn't the one who called them. She waited, the fire department came, she talked to them, blah blah blah. Now the police were trying to find out who made the call to 911, because at the time they arrived, nobody else was there. They finally traced it down to a woman called Chelsea Templeton. She stated that her and her boyfriend were trying to buy some cigarettes, and so they drove to this 7-Eleven. They saw that the lights were off and something or someone was on fire, so they immediately called 911 as they drove. Initially, police were suspicious because sometimes people will call 911 to, just to make themselves less guilty. She said that after she made the call, they immediately drove to the next gas station to buy cigarettes. And it's very fascinating because I don't know how I would feel in this situation. Part of it makes sense to me and part of it doesn't. They said that they wanted to leave because they didn't know that the person who lit this kid on fire was still inside of the 7-Eleven. But at the same time, they never checked back up on it. I don't know, I think I would just sit in my car, call 911 and wait for them to show up. But I understand because there are some people who don't want trouble, don't want to get involved at all, and they try to get out of situations as much as possible, so they just leave. But yeah, still she had a conscience, so she called. But I don't know. But also, if you think about it, they just went to the next gas station, bought their little cigarettes and proceeded with their day. And that's the part that was weird to me. So understandably, the police were really suspicious. So they decided to put the couple in separate interrogation rooms and ask them random questions like, Okay, so before you left the parking lot, what did you say to her? And then they would immediately run to the girls' room and be like, okay, so before you left the parking lot, what did he say to you? In the end, both of them checked out. They were both ruled out as suspects. So next they brought in all the 7-Eleven employees, but nobody had a problem with Kyle, and nobody said that anybody had a problem with Kyle. There was one person by the name of Lori. She was an older woman, and she said that there were some troubles. She had called the police recently at 7-Eleven because this guy by the name of Michael Rosso has been harassing them. Okay, the story went like this. This guy came up and told her that he wants to buy this 6-pack of beer, and she told him to show her his ID, but he didn't take it out of his wallet, and he was so rude. So he was like, man, what's your name? Who is your manager? I'm gonna get you fired. And then he left. Lori decided to go outside and write down his license plate number. So he went out. She was writing it down, and that's when you see her on the CCTV footage that she was rushing back to the 7-Eleven, and he was walking right behind her, and he was like, what the hell? What the fucking hell? What's wrong with you, lady? I'm gonna call the police on you. But after a bit of back and forth, he left the 7-Eleven parking lot because he left the 7-Eleven before. But now, the same thing again in the parking lot. Like this guy. This fucking guy. A couple days later, Lori was working her shift again, and he decided to buy beer again with another cashier. And Lori told her not to sell him this beer because something's just wrong with him. And Michael was just pressuring this other woman to sell him that beer, and she just felt so anxious and she didn't know what to do, so she just sold him the beer. But the real thing is that Michael was 29, so he wasn't underage. So why isn't he showing fucking ID? And meanwhile all of this, in Michael's head, these two women are Karens. Everybody's a Karen. As he was walking out, Lori followed him to, give him a piece of her mind. Like, you're not welcome here, don't come back, we don't want your business. As he was driving out of the parking lot, you can see in the very corner of the CCTV footage that he practically almost hit her with the car. And I don't think he was doing it because he was a bad driver. I think it was a malicious intent to scare her. And then she scrambled back to the 7-Eleven really shaken up. She immediately called the police. The police found Michael Russo using the plate number. They found his house, and he had lived like a block away from the 7-Eleven. They told him that he was no longer allowed in the 7-Eleven and he will be considered trespassing for the next 365 days. So after listening to Lori's story, the police came to a conclusion that if Michael Russo acted like this before, and he lived only a block away from the 7-Eleven, maybe, but just maybe, he could be the 7-Eleven killer. So they immediately got a search warrant and started searching Michael's house. They found a plethora of weapons, just like, an assault rifle, chilling out in his bathroom floor. And they were, I think, legally obtained, which is a crazy sentence to say, that an assault rifle was legally obtained. He had multiple different handguns and he had boxes and boxes of ammo in his closet. And he had very strange things in his garage. Now, they found the same type of gasoline can, and there were a lot of them. They went into Michael's car, and it smelled so strongly of Clorox that they couldn't smell anything else. But he missed one speck of blood. But when they analyzed it, it did not match Kyle's blood. So at this point, the police felt like they did not have enough to arrest this dude. So what they did is that they went over the whole CCTV footage to see if at any point it looked like him. Maybe there was a mask slid up or something. One thing that they found was that on the gasoline can that he had poured the gasoline all over on the counter of it, on the handle of it, there was this paint pattern. It kind of looked like that, someone was painting something and it splashed on it and then it hardened. And guess what? In the evidence file of Michael's gas collection in his freaking garage, on one of the gasoline cans, there was a paint splatter on it. So he was arrested and charged for murder and arson. Now, the defense was like, there is literally no physical proof tying Michael Russo to the 7-Eleven, but the prosecutors felt like, he had a motive. He did not want to steal anything, but he wanted to make a statement. So the jury convicted him of life in prison plus 30 years for arson. Kyle, the 18-year-old who just literally wanted to work a Halloween shift so that all of his co-workers could go to a party on Halloween night and just have some fun. And he's no longer here because of this guy. Another weird thing is that during the whole sentencing, during the trial, he had no emotion on his face. He was like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. And that's it. That's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any stories or recommendations on what you'd like me to cover. I read a lot about true crime and I hope you enjoy listening to them as well. And if you do, check out my other videos. I have a few, not many, more coming. Probably I'm thinking like once a week or something. Okay, I go to university and I work full time. I don't have time, okay, but I'm trying. I really enjoy talking about this because literally no one in my life gives a shit about true crime. So this is my only outlet of like speaking my mind. Yeah, that's it. Bye. Oh, God. I'm so tired. And they are having a party across the street. It's literally like 3 p.m. Yeah, I know, I'm sitting alone drinking, but, that's life.